Hello and welcome to another episode of Infobotts. This is episode number 38 and I am your host, author Frederick Fishman, and today and every day we are sponsored by me. So for links to all my books, apparel, and gear, go to my main Infobotts website at Infobotts.com. That's spelled with 2 T's at the end, Infobotts.com. You can also help us out and show your support by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/Infobotts Podcast. Okay, let's get started. And now for something a little bit different. Let's go behind the curtain and learn a little bit more about how we do the Infobotts Podcast. What I'm doing here with the Infobotts Podcast is that I'm trying to bring you stories that have an interest to me mainly, but hopefully to you as well. The subject matter is varied, and the timing fuses on these stories are not hot, and they're not expendable. They are more evergreen, so if you or anyone else wants to replay an episode with a bit of research material that you need or want, you can access these stories and these episodes at any time. I'm not delivering minute-by-minute news stories. I'll leave that to CNN, Fox, or NBC. My work on this podcast is very similar to a news aggregator that you might peruse online like Google News or CNN Online or even the Drudge Report. News aggregator Drudge Report culls through stories written by news organizations like Reuters, UPI, API, and others. Drudge has 11 billion, that's billion with a B, news from those bedrock news gathering organizations like AP are written by their journalists, and then Drudge lists them with clickbait titles he uses and puts them on his site, aggregating those stories for you to choose to read. You click on the title and are taken to the next web page, which contains the story. Something similar is going on with my daily podcast Infobotts. Although one story at a time, I cull through those same news sources. I rewrite and encapsulate the highlights of the story and then deliver them to you. My workflow is like this. I'm online every day for hours, researching for my books and other projects, and for this Infobotts podcast. I come across an interesting story written by a professional journalist. I then do that rewrite on a standard rundown form I have developed. I record the podcast, and I move that recording to Adobe Audition where I edit the recording, taking out all of my coughs and sips of water, reading stumbles, and finally I upload the podcast to my podcast web host at Captivate for you to consume. So what are the skills that I use that I've developed over the years? Well, those skills come from my years of experience in writing content. How long have I been practicing those skills? Well, it's been decades. Our audience is growing. Last week, my web host analytics showed that we are up almost 200% in downloads for this brand new podcast. You are showing interest, and I want to thank you for your participation. I will strive to bring you information, data, research, and sounds of the world that interest you. Thank you for being part of that 200% growth. I want to thank you for listening to another episode of the Infobotts Podcast. Please support our efforts to bring you Infobotts by going to our Patreon page, which is at patreon.com. That's spelled Patreon/Infobotts Podcast. Join us again for another episode of the Infobotts. Bye-bye.